What if I told you there was once a nation that did the unthinkable, walked away from gold, the very foundation of money itself? Imagine that for a second. For thousands of years, gold was the one thing people trusted above all else. Empires rose because of it. Wars were fought to control it. Families measured their wealth by it. When paper currencies collapsed, when banks went bankrupt, when empires fell into dust, people always turned back to gold. And yet, in the depths of crisis, one nation stood before the world and said, "No more." They turned their back on the metal that had been worshipped as eternal wealth. Overnight, centuries of tradition were shattered. Economists screamed that they would collapse. Newspapers declared it was national suicide. Their own citizens panicked, believing their money was now worthless paper. But what happened next was not collapse, it was transformation. Instead of sinking, this forgotten nation discovered a dangerous secret, one that still controls your money today. A decision so radical and so world-changing that you, right now, are living in the system it created. So who were they? Why did they betray gold? And what does their gamble mean for the future of every dollar, pound, and euro we use today? To answer, we need to rewind. Gold has been more than a shiny metal. It has been the backbone of trust. From the pharaohs of Egypt to the merchants of Rome, from the dynasties of China to the conquistadors of Spain, gold was wealth. Unlike crops that spoiled or silver that tarnished, gold endured. It was scarce, beautiful, and universally accepted. By the 1800s, the world formalized this ancient obsession into the gold standard. Under this system, every paper note was tied to a fixed amount of gold in a vault. If a bank gave you a pound note, you could exchange it for a set weight of gold. This promise built confidence. This confidence built trade. Gold restrained governments from printing endlessly because each note had to be backed. It created stability across borders. For decades, the gold standard worked, giving nations discipline and citizens trust. But under its glitter, a flaw was hidden. When the First World War erupted, governments spent beyond imagining. They borrowed, taxed, and printed to keep armies fed and weapons flowing. By the war's end in 1918, the debts were colossal. Nations longed to return to gold, but their economies were broken. Tying their currencies again to gold meant crushing austerity. Higher interest rates, fewer jobs, less spending, more pain. But leaders convinced themselves gold was sacred. They forced the system back into place in the 1,920 seconds, believing it would restore stability. Instead, it set the stage for disaster. The 1,929 crash hit, and the Great Depression spread like wildfire. Factories closed, millions lost jobs, banks collapsed, one after another. But because nations clung to gold, they were trapped. They couldn't print money to stimulate demand. They couldn't let currencies fall to help exports. They had to defend their gold reserves at all costs. That meant raising interest rates when their people needed relief. It meant cutting spending when people were starving. The very system that had once protected them was now strangling them. In 1931, the crisis reached its breaking point in Britain, then the world's greatest empire. Investors demanded gold for their pounds, draining the nation's reserves. The Bank of England fought to defend the currency, but watched helplessly as the vaults emptied. Britain faced ruin. And then came the decision that shocked the world. On the 21st of September 1931, Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound was no longer exchangeable for gold. The words, "as good as gold," were suddenly meaningless. Overnight, Britain's money was backed not by metal, but by government decree. The reaction was chaos. International financiers mocked Britain as reckless. Diplomats warned of collapse. British citizens feared ruin. And yet something remarkable happened. Freed from gold's straitjacket, Britain could finally act. The pound fell in value, which made British exports cheaper and more competitive abroad. Interest rates dropped, easing the burden on borrowers. Slowly, painfully, the economy began to recover. Meanwhile, countries that stayed chained to gold, France, the United States, Others continued to suffer deeper depressions. The unthinkable had worked. Britain's gamble broke the spell. If the empire itself could abandon gold, then no nation was safe. Within 2 years, the United States followed. In 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt suspended gold convertibility. Americans were ordered to hand in their gold coins and bars to the government. The dollar was devalued. To many Americans, it felt like betrayal, but the economy gained breathing room. Across Europe, one by one, nations abandoned gold. France resisted the longest, but eventually the system tore them apart too. By the end of the decade, the gold standard that had ruled money for generations was dead. But if abandoning gold gave nations freedom, it also unleashed a curse. Gold had been discipline. Without it, money became whatever governments declared it to be. Economists called this fiat currency. It was powerful. Governments could print to fight crises, fund wars, or stimulate growth, but it was dangerous. Once politicians tasted this power, they could never resist. The United States clung to a partial gold standard after World War II, promising to redeem dollars for gold at $35 an ounce. But by the 1,960 seconds, even America could not keep the promise. Wars in Korea and Vietnam, welfare programs at home, and mounting debts drained reserves. Finally, in 1971, President Richard Nixon closed the gold window. From that day forward, the dollar, and by extension, every global currency, was backed by nothing but trust in governments. The world had entered the age of fiat. Fiat gave governments flexibility, but it also created new dangers. Without gold's discipline, money printing exploded. In the 1,970 seconds, America faced double-digit inflation, with prices rising faster than wages. In Latin America, during the 1,980 seconds, hyperinflation wiped out savings overnight. In Zimbabwe and Venezuela, money became so worthless that people carried bills in wheelbarrows. Freedom from gold had come with temptations humanity could not control. And yet, here's the paradox. Every time a crisis shakes the world, people rush back to gold. In 2008, during the global financial meltdown, gold prices surged. In 2020, when the pandemic triggered trillions in new money printing, gold hit record highs. Deep down, humanity still trusts gold more than paper promises. Even though we live in a fiat age, our instincts whisper that gold never lies. So what does this story teach us? First, that stability and survival are always in conflict. Gold gave stability but suffocated economies in crisis. Fiat gave survival but tempts governments into recklessness. Second, that trust is the real currency. Whether backed by gold or not, money works only as long as people believe in it. Lose that trust, and no system survives. And third, history repeats. Rome debased its coins, Britain abandoned gold. Today, we inflate digital money. The cycle is always the same. Discipline, temptation, collapse, reset. The forgotten nation that abandoned gold didn't just save itself, it reshaped the entire global system. It proved that money could exist without metal, that governments could print at will, that value was not in the coin, but in belief. And that is the system you live under today. Your salary, your savings, your rent. Every transaction in your life rests on the same fragile promise Britain made in 1931. Trust us. But here's the final warning. If money is only belief, what happens when belief breaks? What happens when people stop trusting the dollar, the euro, the yen? Do we return to gold? Do we adopt digital currencies? Or do we face something even more radical, a reset of the entire global financial order? No empire lasts forever. Not Rome, not Britain, not even ours. And that means one day we will all live through the next great reset. If this story opened your eyes, don't let it end here. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and join us as we uncover more financial secrets that history tried to bury. Because the past is never gone. It is only waiting for its chance to return.